Musician, producer, and iconoclast Grimes, also known as Claire Boucher, was thrown into the mainstream media spotlight rather abruptly to those who didn't already appreciate her music when she debuted as girlfriend of equally creative rocket scientist, overseer, and CEO of SpaceX, ex-PayPal executive, founder of Tesla, The Boring Company, and Neuralink, and proponent for colonization of Mars, Elon Musk. I'm well aware that he has other titles, and I think that eccentric billionaire is used fairly often, so I decided to list some different, though no less commonly referenced, titles for Elon. Anyways, as I was saying, Grimes made a public, unspoken announcement of her courtship with Elon Musk when they arrived together at the Met Gala, an event at the Metropolitan Opera that annually draws all manner of celebrity, fame, and infamy through its doors. They had both infamously made the same joke, linking AI future thought experiment Rococo's Basilisk with Rococo architecture. Rococo's Basilisk was the term they both, unknowingly at first, had in common. It has often been said that, because Grimes had a fairly huge following mostly in alternative music circles, but large enough to be equal to the following she would have gained had she been advertised through mainstream outlets, even though she did it independently, that when Grimes became associated with Elon, it cast her in a light that brought a lot of, quote, shade, negative publicity, and assumptions around her, at least to the extent that Elon had to deal with as well, which is still small proportionate to the amount of praise that they have both received, as should be duly noted. She had to deal with the same sort of duality that Elon experienced in tabloids and public opinion, and it brought just as much trouble as it did extra fame, as can be expected with Pham, but perhaps more so because she was now considered a somewhat Marie Antoinette-esque figure, which a lot of her alternative and indie counterparts and fans found difficult to swallow. But Grimes did as she pleased and loved who she loved, and continues to do so. Grimes and Elon have been sweethearts of the media, the internet, gossip columns, YouTubers, and paparazzos alike, and I don't intend to make that even bigger of a stressor for them. They have even been villainized and have cleverly harnessed that kind of energy at times, in a very creative, archetypal way. Anyways, they recently came out of deliberate relative obscurity, which they had found comfort in after a lot of stalking, doxing, and play-by-play location posting had forced them to move several times, refugees from their own polarizing brand of fame, which the media, more than any organic attribution, can be almost exclusively credited with creating and feeding for months on end. Unfortunately, their story sells, and the more that top-shelf magazines can make them look like Louis XIV and Marie Antoinette, the more they will. They have more reasons, and yes, that was plural, if you haven't yet been clued in, to keep out of the spotlight nowadays. They now have a son to protect from the media, so that he can live a childhood unmarred by the stresses of constant cameras and microphones in his face. Needless to say, many have speculated that he won't have a conventional childhood, but that is quite the bold judgment to make, as no one truly knows how Elon and Claire choose to parent, or what their children's daily lives look like. Back to the subject of unethical media practices and exploitation of proper nouns. It could be said that it is poetic justice that Claire and Elon named their child what they did, as it has been all over the board as far as people guessing the pronunciation, and in perhaps their own way of getting back at the media and ensuring that prying eyes are rightfully kept in the dark as to the details surrounding their baby boy. They both gave different versions of the pronunciation of their child's name in different interviews. Furthermore, regarding the unethical media, as I was getting to, and which I have made another video about, a Vanity Fair reporter by the name of Devin Gordon recently showed up to interview Grimes about her work and her new album, and her apparent separation from Elon. In addition to sharing that her relationship with Elon was fluid, and that they were best friends and co-parenting just fine and dandily, something else was shared, albeit against the wishes of Grimes and Elon. Evidently, the reporter heard a baby crying upstairs, and it was revealed, in a manner both unplanned and unprecedented in media history, that Grimes and Elon had welcomed their second baby, a little girl, into the world in secret via surrogacy. Their baby was supposed to be kept secret. They wanted to protect her from the press, as they had learned a lesson with their first baby about how horrible people can be on Twitter and elsewhere. not to mention the paparazzi. The reporter tried to use professional ethics as an excuse as to why he must include this in his story. I can just imagine him wide-eyed and salivating at the prospect of not only the royalties he would receive from such an article, but the pay raise, brownie points from his boss, and professional clout he would gain from such an unexpected news break. However, journalists do have a code of ethics that they must follow, and exploitation of people already suffering from their own celebrity is something most certainly to be frowned upon, and I wholly expect that to become more evident once the headlines change and the initial illuminating aspects of his story wear off. It wasn't his story to tell, and Grimes has said herself on Twitter that the interview wasn't meant to be a tell-all. The agreement was that she would discuss her professional life, not her private life. It was greedy and exploitative of Mr. Gordon to use this in his story, and his sorry attempt at sounding apologetic in the midst of his storytelling in the article is laughable. Just because he acknowledged stressing out a new mom and had his "oh, the humanity" moment doesn't mean that he was acting within the interests of humanity or maternal instinct, or journalistic ethical obligations for that matter. Quite the contrary, indeed. Anyways, what Grimes shared about her and Elon's relationship could be taken a number of ways. She is bearing children with him, or has been, and this is most certainly 2022. They could have any number of arrangements that he wouldn't have a word for, or that we wouldn't have a word for, and they are important people in each other's lives. From the Vanity Fair article spawned several offshoots as other newspapers and magazines piggybacked stories out of tiny details from the article. There were headlines such as Grimes shares details about Elon Musk's daily living habits, and Grimes tells all, which really, those were false headlines, or at least exaggerations, because all that Grimes described were tiny things about how much money they don't spend on food, and she described it, for instance, the food thing, as living, quote, below the poverty level. But this was largely a joke, and it was meant more as a refutation to the idea that they're living this sort of decadent lifestyle. Grimes in no way was oversharing or attempting to air out their laundry, clean or dirty. In fact, she and Elon have continued to remain consistent in their policy of keeping the details about their private lives under wraps, and regardless of the status of their relationship, have not wavered from this. Clickbait is clickbait, and those stories and articles are meant to sell magazines and get scrolls and clicks, as they always have been. Anyways, thank you for watching. Please subscribe.